draft.
LSU junior Jamar Chase has reportedly informed the team he will forego this season in order to concentrate on his pro career. Chase led the country in receiving yards and touchdowns for last season's national champion Tigers. The decision, which is set to be formally announced on Monday, is reportedly not due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but instead a choice by Chase to focus on draft preparation instead of playing another season. LSU is set to open their season September 26th against Mississippi State.
Fox's Ryan Mayer. I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon or call 646-1463.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Here we go on another week of Tall Tales. Today is my very first day of the week. On Monday, I've got a whole 5 days of Tall Tales to look forward to, so it doesn't get any better than that. Starting out, as usual, with Zemi Ikotny. That portion of the program where I rag on the Daily News for never running local editorials. Today is no exception. I'm not even going to spend any time telling you what it is. Instead of reading the Daily News editorial, I'm going to read something that ran on the Post yesterday, which is a very nice piece of work. It's an op-ed from a doctor named Dr. Romel Carlos, a board-certified neurologist practicing in Guam for 18 years. He is a pediatrician and a diplomate of the American Board of Disability Analysts and is the editor-in-chief of the Guam Medical Association Journal. And one of the things that Dr. Romel Carlos says is this: one seemingly fundamental truth that I must convince myself to accept is that this virus will continue to circulate around the world for years to come. We have also seen that somewhere around 80% of Wuhan virus infections are mild or asymptomatic. You might already have been infected and just do not know it. If you never get sick, you may never know that you were infected, and it will likely never likely know how you became infected. Notwithstanding the various and sometimes temporarily effective elimination and suppression strategies being implemented for the Wuhan virus will continue to circulate globally. Now, boy, I thought if we all stayed home and wore our masks every waking hour and didn't even think about getting closer than 6 feet to someone else, that the Wuhan virus would go away. Isn't that what you thought, Jose?
That's what I thought, but it's a new episode every week.
But isn't that what we've kind of been led to believe? We've got to flatten the curve. We've got to take these protective measures, and we can beat the Wuhan virus. Well, that's not what Dr. Carlos is saying. He says case numbers will wax and wane over time and outbreaks will pop up here and there. The WHO claimed, the WHO?
Tommy?
First base. The WHO claimed that herd immunity is still a long way off from stopping Wuhan virus worldwide. Millions may have been infected, but there are billions of us occupying this planet. Herd immunity may be achieved when as little as 50% of the population is immune. Herd immunity occurs when enough of the population is immune to the virus, whether via exposure or vaccine, for transmission to wane. However, currently only about 10% of the global population has antibodies against the infection. Will 40% more of the people please hurry up? How about a vaccine? Even when a highly anticipated vaccine or vaccines arrive, they are likely only to suppress and not entirely eradicate the virus. It remains uncertain how long the vaccine will provide immunity. Reinfections from the virus have been reported worldwide. So what do we do if you agree with my premise described above? Should we all ignore the virus? Perhaps better to worry myself to death as I lock up my house and my family forever? I suggest that neither is a good choice. Experts in epidemiology, disaster planning, and vaccine development are coming to embrace the reality that we will live with this virus, and that accepting that reality is crucial to best planning the next phase of American pandemic response. Part of that response is going to be never going to the beach. Yeah, that's where we are in Guam. You know, we're going to fight the virus by never going to the beach. Guam needs to do the same. We do not have to choose between repeated lockdowns or massive numbers of deaths. We are in this for the long haul. Yes, all of us. To plan, we do need to know where we stand. There's a current need to continue implementing strong, effective testing strategies. We need to complete contact tracing until we develop a well-thought-out plan as to how we move forward, knowing we'll be living with Wuhan virus. It's a good idea to wear masks, practice social distancing, etc. We need to resume some form, here's where he does so well right up to here. We need to resume some forms of normalcy. Come on, Doc. Let's reword that. We need to resume some forms of normality in our daily lives. For sure, our kids need to go to school and we need to socialize. As my personal mantra goes, life must go on.
Obladi, oblada.
There you go. as perseverance and resilience are the foundation of my character. Perseverance and resilience. I will start to think about how we can, as a society, learn to live with the virus. I ask that you do that too. Nice piece of work. Nice piece of work, Dr. Carlos. Thank you very much. And it lays a nice foundation for what I'm going to treat as the Daily News editorial. I am a subscriber to the e-edition of both the Post and the Daily News. And I then go to the e-edition of each of those so that I can print from my trusty iPad here. So I look at both the e-edition and the online edition of both the papers. Today's e-edition of the Post ran an editorial that said, "Through our resiliency, we can overrun this pandemic." It was a long editorial. It wasn't just an ordinary editorial. It was by Mindy Uggan, who is the Takilo Magus Post.
The editorial.
Yeah, the editor, the great managing editor of the Post. But on the on the web edition, the editorial for today was yesterday's editorial, which is titled, "Do We Have a Plan Yet?" So I'm going to, sorry, Mindy, I'm just going to push you aside. Mindy's editorial is the kind that never will see a blue star. It is what I would call cheerleading. Let's have a big cheer for the team. You know, the kind of talk that coaches give at halftime to the football team sometimes can be very inspirational, can actually turn the team around, but this isn't it. So, sorry, Mindy. Yesterday, you done good.
Did we waver when the Nazis bombed Pearl Harbor? Do you remember that? Was it 19? Animal House.
Yeah. Not when the Nazis bombed Pearl Harbor. We didn't give up.
We didn't give up.
Right. Okay, so ironically, yesterday's editorial in the Post was titled, "Do We Have a Plan Yet?" When Wuhan virus reached Guam shores in March, it cut off the anchor of life as we knew it. And without a sail to help us navigate through this pandemic, we are at the mercy of the ebb and flow of positive case numbers and Kim Jong-lu. I mean Governor Leon Guerrero. Sorry. While many people continue to practice social distancing, wearing masks, and washing their hands, the question of where or what the government's plan is to help the community hasn't been answered. Instead, it seems we are always waiting for others to step in and bail us out. The Guam Pandemic Plan Review meeting on March 4, organized by the Department of Public Health and Social Services and attended by dozens of local, federal, and military organizations, showed officials in a frenzy to determine Guam's plan should the Wuhan virus reach Guam shores. This is March the 4th, which, by the way, was a very appropriate day to hold that meeting. Jose, you know why?
I do not know why.
That is the only day of the year that gives a command.
May the 4th?
March 4th.
March 4th. Ah.
March 4th, yeah.
Very good.
Uh-huh. The existing Guam pandemic influenza plan, revised in 2008, and I think our friend Jack has given us a heads up about that on more than once, was rebooted for 2020. It already provided a guideline to follow should influenza or other infectious outbreak occur. The existing plan outlined community containment measures, medical surge contingencies, disease surveillance and detection in human populations, health care, emergency medical services, vaccine and antiviral delivery, community education campaigns and risk communications activities, mass fatality management, and an unlimited supply of excuses. The government, it seemed, was fashioning a sail, ensuring we had something to help guide us forward and through from what we could see in other countries and economies would be rough waters. Guam was Wuhan virus free at the time, and we didn't know for how long, but officials were determined to plot the best way forward when that would no longer be the case. Quote, "We are going to prepare for the worst and hope for the best," Governor Leon Guerrero told participants. One of the options, let's see, did I read that right? We are going to hope for the worst. No, I guess I read it right the first time. Sometimes it's a little confusing what it is exactly that we're hoping for. One of the options discussed was to use a skilled nursing unit to accommodate patients ill with Wuhan virus. This is March 4th, we're talking about this. A month later, patients at the skilled nursing unit were transferred to a nonprofit facility to ensure they are safe, as the skilled nursing facility is open to Wuhan virus patients. DPHS announced it had started hiring nurses, and there was a plan for the government to hire more, not just for their agency, but for Guam Memorial Hospital, which has had a nursing shortage for years. Two of the largest issues, bed capacity and medical staff to go with it, seem to be addressed. Indeed, there were some long discussions, and there was hope. Then Wuhan virus landed on Guam. We didn't have enough tests. In a recent interview, Dr. Jana Manglotnia, wait a minute, I got to be careful how I say that. We didn't have enough tests. In a recent interview, Dr. Jana Manglotnia. I don't want to have the Women's Chamber of Commerce teed off at me because I didn't pronounce Dr. Jana Manglotnia's name reverently enough. They might try to cancel me, Jose.
As long as you don't Akimoto it.
In a recent interview, Dr. Jana Manglotnia noted that Guam had 20 test kits at the time that could test 20 people. The United States was still trying to figure out what tests worked and when they could be sent to states and territories. Luckily, at the time, there were few people sick enough to require hospitalization. Officials warned us that would change. Numbers have waxed and waned. Now, where did we hear that phrase before?
Waxed and waned?
Waxed and waned. Dr. Carlos's piece. Numbers have waxed and I suspect it'll probably turn up in Joe Biden's next speech.
He has no knowledge of that, though.
Well, he needn't have any knowledge of it. Just he never saw a phrase he couldn't plagiarize, right?
Right.
That shouldn't have been too much of an issue if we'd kept to a plan. 5 months into the pandemic and faced with our second wave and our skilled nursing facility with a 54-bed capacity, 54 beds, can't be used because the repairs for the air conditioning unit have been, quote, stuck in procurement. Now, of course, I got to wonder how anything gets stuck in procurement. Doesn't the governor have a son-in-law? Yeah. Isn't, you know, the symbol on the governor's son-in-law's office door when he was still in the government was a plunger, so he could use it to unstick sticky drains and sticky procurement processes and red hotels and things like that.
PW.
Yeah.
Procurement warrior.
Procurement warrior. Yeah, 5 months into the pandemic and faced with our second wave, and our skilled nursing unit with a 54-bed capacity can't be used because the repairs for the air conditioning unit have been stuck in procurement. And only a week or so ago did the government start procurement process for a tent hospital that could take months to get to Guam, if not longer. At the same time, telling the admiral, no, we don't need your military tents that are right here on the island and could be popped up over a weekend. We'd rather buy our own. And when the hospital does arrive, what nurses and doctors will watch over the patients in light of the still existing nursing shortfall? Additionally, on the issues of community containment, disease surveillance and detection, and medical surge contingencies, we seem to be struggling to figure out 5 months after the plan was supposed to have been fashioned. The government at last count had just over 50 contact tracers, even though it warned that we would see a surge in Wuhan virus numbers. And while we have thousands of test kits being flown into the island, it seems we don't have enough in terms of lab capacity to test the samples being collected or to let people know what their test results are. And that's scary, especially for those who have been staying at home, wearing their masks and social distancing when out in public, and washing their hands at every opportunity. It's understandable that there was confusion and chaos when Wuhan virus first landed on our shores. The whole world was still studying the virus and trying to figure out ways to contain it. But having been armed with the knowledge that a surge was anticipated, there should have been more done to help us face it 5 months later. Instead, Guamanians are stuck with a choice of staying home and avoiding the outside world, or going into the world and trying to eke out a living in a faltering economy where you can't even go to the beach. And what's disheartening is people in the latter category, those who are speaking out because they need to work and they need to open their businesses in order to survive, are being vilified instead of helped. But that's a matter for another editorial. You know, like the rumor that's circulating around that there is a movement to cancel Jeff at Pirates Cove because he participated in that rally.
Boo.
Yeah. Whoa.
That wasn't too successful, though. I don't know if you followed any social media reports on Saturday.
On how well the cancellation worked?
It didn't go so well.
Yeah. It probably caused Jeff's business to pick up.
I think you hired a couple more people.
Okay, in the words of one reader, there's no excuse for claiming we are caught by surprise by what happened this month. Getting prepared for it after the fact is a darn shame. And then there's the old saying, you know, if you fail to plan, in effect, you have planned to fail. And that's exactly where we are. We started out on March 4th, and we let it all get away from us. In the meantime, and surviving some absolutely stupid things like putting roadblocks out on the highway. I guess the understanding or the thought was that the virus wouldn't go through those roadblocks and we could isolate the virus to certain parts of the island. And this thing about you cannot go to the beach by yourself. And then in order to enforce that, the organization of the Chiefs Task Force, it would sweep down on the beach and haul you off to the pokey if you had the temerity to go to the beach all by yourself.
Those are some expensive winged horses.
Yes. Okay, so before I put that away, I've got to do the honors here. Sorry, Mindy. I hope, Mindy, I hope you wrote the other one too, because that is a very good editorial. And it certainly deserves the coveted blue star. Thank you, Guam Daily Post, for really laying it out and telling us, you know, kind of what we've all known for a while, but never were able to articulate it in 2 well-chosen pages. So thank you very much. So let's take a short break, and I'm going to come back to the card.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
$5 footlong. Pile high with veggies.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, Eat Fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, so I have a post here from, who was it? Hang on just a second here. Yeah, Rico Blancaflor. Plenty people ate at Just Pirates Cove this past weekend. Thanks, cancel cultural Karens. Cancel cultural Karens. KKK.
Oh.
The new KKK. Cancel cultural Karens.
Careful, you're sounding woke there, Bob.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the card for today. Just a note, we were informed of the passing of Don Parkinson here very recently. A man who certainly made his mark on Guam. He was an acting attorney general. He was speaker, as you were senator for several years. He was speaker of the legislature. He was a lawyer, etc. So I'm going to offer the obligatory condolences, etc., to those who have survived on. And then later on in the program, if time permits, I'm going to tell you about the time that the speakership of Don in the 23rd legislature. And in order to understand that, I'm going to have to relate the the phenomenon that occurred, sort of a coup occurred in the legislature where a coalition of Democrats and Republicans wrestled control of the legislature from the Democrat majority, resulting finally in a coalition of 13 senators and an opposition group referred to as the Crazy Eight. Yeah. So stay tuned. I'm going to work that into the card here somewhere. Okay, so today's card. This is what I've got. Starting out, of course, with Tina. Tina now is up to 7 whole days. It's been 7 days since Tina saw the kind of emergent circumstances that affected the safety and of the people of Guam, so as to call the legislature into special session and waive public hearing requirements. So today I've got Jane Flores versus Akimoto. This has been on the calendar before as social justice warriors versus Akimoto. And Maga Gaga versus Jana Manglotnia. I've got BLM versus Kenosha. And if you remember the other day, Kenosha is not terra incognita to me. I've been to Kenosha more than once. It's not that far from where I grew up. I've got Rutgers versus Grammar, which is, you know, just when you think you've seen every crazy thing that the left can do, they surprise you. This is Rutgers versus Grammar. And then just the title of the next item will cause you to chuckle a little bit. It's Chelsea Clinton versus white privilege. No! Yeah. So Chelsea, in this article, Chelsea is telling us what she's doing to combat white privilege.
I read a little bit about that. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. And then I've got Paris versus Shelton. It looks like, you know, a couple of, in this corner we have an environmental wacko. And in this corner we have an environmental wacko. May the best team win. And then I've got Julian Uggan versus capitalism. In a sense, no surprise here. And after that, I've got Underwood versus Castro versus Michael San Nicolas, if I get that far today. So let's just see how it goes here, starting out with there's an article that ran in Saturday's Post. Women's Chamber says doctor made misogynistic statements. So I covered this a little bit on Friday, but apparently the Women's Chamber did a press release and got some press in both the Post and the Daily News. So if that's what you wanted to do, you want people to talk about it a little more, fine. I will talk about it a little bit more. So in order to understand this, here's what happened. Dr. Akimoto has been a very vocal member of the medical community. Dr. Akimoto is perhaps accused of some things. Shyness and reticence certainly would not be among them. Dr. Akimoto is one who will speak out and call attention to the things that he thinks or that he determines need to have attention called to them. He's been very critical of the Department of Public Health and Social Services and its management, and of the hospital, and of the governor. He was on a talk show on another station. Yeah, which shall remain nameless here. And on that talk show, he was very critical of Dr. Jana Manglotnia. Oh, if you didn't know, I will now tell you, Dr. Jana Manglotnia is, as CNN would say, a person with a cervix. She is a female, a double X.
That is confirmed.
Yes. And Vince was very critical of her in general and extremely critical of the public remarks that Dr. Jana Manglotnia had made, blaming all of the virus problems on me and Jose and the real Joe Cruz and
You people,
yeah, and Mana and the DJs and all of the wonderful people that work here at the Point, right? Yeah, it was our fault, all our fault. And she didn't couch her words in terms of politeness or anything, which was fine. I mean, she spoke she was loud and clear that it wasn't their fault. They were the victims of the public carelessness. The people at Public Health were the victims of public carelessness and inability to follow simple rules. So apparently this got under Dr. Vince Akimoto's skin. And when he was on that other talk show, he didn't beat around the bush, and he came right out and said it. And in the process of saying that, he used a couple of words, or he used one word that is on the verboten list for broadcast radio stations. So obviously I can't tell you what it was. But for the purposes of this part of the program, I'm going to use a couple of substitutes. One, and you can see if you could figure out what I'm talking about. One of the substitutes would be the word flub.
Flub.
Uh-huh.
All right, I'm writing that down. Flub.
Yeah, it's a word we all remember, from when we used to play baseball, He should have been out at first, but the first baseman, but the shortstop flubbed the throw, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he flubbed it. And the other one is, let's see, I worked this out this morning. The other one is bleach.
Okay.
Bleach, yeah. So apparently what Dr. Akimoto did was at one point of the program, he said, flub you, Dr. Manglotnia. And in another part of the program, he said, Dr. Manglotnia is a flubbin' bleach. Bleach, yeah. So I've talked to Dr. Manglotnia about that, and, I'm going to have to kind of modernize, or I'm going to give you an autobiographical workup on language here. Those two words, the real words, of course, have been part of my vocabulary for too long. And as a matter of fact, there are times in military service where if you aren't properly responsive to those words, you may have a problem. So I've been well acquainted with those words for a long, long time. Try to curb their usage as much as I can for a very selfish reason, among others. That is that a person tends to detract from his ability to persuade when he relies on these crutches, and that's what they are.
I concur.
Yeah. And most of my youth, that was kind of the approach that I took, still do. And I think with most of the folks that I grew up with, that was pretty much the approach that everyone took in those days, especially when we were around members of the female sex. Now, of course, I grew up in a generation where if you're walking down the street with a woman, you walk on the outside and she walks on the inside. This goes all the way back to the time when horse and buggies, when streets could be full of puddles and mud. But anyhow, when you walk down the street with a woman, you steer her to the inside and you walk on the outside. You come to a door, you open the door for the female. Unless you're walking into a bar or a tavern, then you open the door and walk in first, putting everybody on notice in that bar or restaurant or whatever that the female who follows you and you are an item. If she walks in first, it sends a different message. Being very, very careful never to use either of those two words in the company of any female whatsoever. That would have been seen as really bad form. And then as far as the females were concerned, I think probably for, maybe the first almost 30 years of my life, I thought that females, as a matter of physiology, of the structure of their vocal cords, etc., were probably incapable of saying that word because I'd never heard a female use that word. And the first time I heard a female use that word, it was shocking.
No doubt.
Yeah. Far from what it's like nowadays. I mean, that word has been so devalued because, I know folks of either sex, well, let me correct that, of all the sexes, who use the word that I'm substituting flub for as a punctuation mark. It really doesn't have any meaning at all anymore.
As a punchline.
But not even a punchline, just a punctuation mark. At the end of a sentence, you use flub, right? So that's where Dr. Akimoto found himself. Those two words came out of his mouth. I've talked to him about this, and I had to compliment him on his forthrightness and his coming out and what we used to, I don't know if I can even say this anymore. We used to describe someone who was very direct and didn't beat around the bush as someone who would call a spade a spade. I think nowadays you'd probably have to say he is one who would call a pointed entrenching tool a pointed entrenching tool. But that's Dr. Vince Akimoto. And then I mentioned his use of the colorful vocabulary, and he said, well, I've done something about that. I went straight home from the radio station and washed my mouth out with soap.
He said that.
He said that.
Okay,
Yeah. He washed his mouth out with soap. So I think that's enough. I think that should hold off the cancel culture commandos from now on. He also said that if he ever goes on the air again, he's going to bring a bar of soap with him. Or
at least a 7-second delay.
Yeah. But having laid that foundation there, in other words, the use of those words have been so devalued nowadays as to make them to make them not that much of a problem. It's still a problem for a broadcast station. I've had a couple people use those words on the phone, and boom, I just cut them off and tell them, that's it. No more. And if they ever call back again, I caution them. But here's what's really going on. What's really going on here is we're seeing agenda flexing. Now, Vince has his own agenda, and talk about transparent. It's pretty easy to see where Vince is coming from and what his agenda is. It's primarily dealing with this virus and good health care for the people. That's Vince's agenda. On the other side, we have the classic feminist agenda. And the way it works is you have this ideology, this identity politics type ideology, where you are able to always cast yourself as a victim, as you trot out your grievance politics as often as you can and cast yourself as the victim. And of course, you're the victim, you're the marginalized one, you're the oppressed, the females will tell you. And guess who the oppressors are, Jose?
Yeah.
Every time.
Every single time.
Every single time.
By default.
Yeah. So the agenda then is furthered by finding a triggering issue that allows the feminists to trot out that agenda and make as much out of it as they can, and talk about cancel culture, cancel the person who had the temerity of criticizing someone who is a female. And that's really what it is about. It's about Vince having the gall to say something unflattering about a female. That's really what caused the feminists to jump on their agenda. And then the profanity is just a really, really nice fulcrum to put this whole thing on and make the teeter-totter bounce up and down. So that's what's really going on. I'm not taken in by that. And, we're seeing it over and over again in the year 2020. The whole George Floyd thing. You take someone who later events show died of an overdose of fentanyl, who had been involved in committing a crime, who had encountered 3 police officers who, and at trial this will come out, these 3 police officers were dealing with someone who was in a panicky, agitated state. And their own training requirements required them to do exactly what they did, put him on the ground and immobilize him and call for medical support. That's exactly what they did. But of course, the cops were white, or that cop was white, George Floyd was black, and the whole Antifa, Black Lives Matter, Marxist agenda boils over. Just boom, just like that. Spreads across the country like wildfire. So it's the same pattern. Have this ideology ready to go so that when there's any kind of a precipitating event, you can jump on it and further your particular ideology, your identity politics ideology. And that's exactly what happened here with Vince. Now, I have... The Women's Chamber of Commerce came down on him, and I talked about that the other day. I have here a letter from, it says, the title is BWA, Akimoto needs to apologize. So I'm going to come back to this right after this short break.
Hafadade, this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
So there we go. We had about 6 more minutes of that big halftime show, so grab your popcorn, make yourself comfortable. So the Bureau of Women's Affairs sends an unsigned note. Well, actually, it's for immediate release. So it's an unsigned note, apparently, to the same people that Dr. Jana Manglotnia were talking about.
Very urgent.
Yeah, and it's they. It's you and me, and for immediate release to everybody, right? And I don't know what BWA stands for, do you?
No.
BWA, Akimoto needs to apologize. Since its revival in 2019, which was a source of a lot of chatter here on Tall Tales, the Bureau of Women's Affairs has been tackling many issues facing women in our society. Period poverty. Some kind of a punctuation problem, I guess, maybe fonts on their typewriters or what. Domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment, human trafficking, the absence of an abortionist here on the island. Remember that one? That's the only thing that I'm aware of that Jane Flores ever did as a director at $70,000 a year as a director of Bureau of Women's Affairs.
And not successfully.
Thank goodness. But we had an emergency because we'd gone over 6 months without a reported abortion, and the governor had to deal with that emergency. So she deputized Jane Flores to beat the bushes for an abortionist here in the mainland or wherever. So that I have to tell you, that really soured my attitude on the Bureau of Women's Affairs to begin with. First of all, I thought it was a needless frill. And then this whole thing about, well, we got to go out and find an abortionist, really soured my attitude on it. And then the sentence goes on, other actions that debase and degrade women in our community, in our region. So we have a bureau that protects women from debasement and degradation. That's nice. Yeah.
As long as they make it out of the womb.
This office has always advocated that if you see or hear something, you should speak up. The BWA, Bureau of Women's Affairs. How silly of me. The Bureau of Women's Affairs is very proud of the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce for doing so yesterday with regard to Dr. Akimoto's vitriolic remarks against Dr. Jana Manglotnia. There you go. Vitriolic remarks. You could use vitriolic remarks against, he could have used them against, say, Dr. Romel Carlos. Yeah, so what? But vitriolic remarks against a female. If you see something, say something. Yeah. So she's very proud of the Bureau of Women's Affairs. Refresh my recollection, Jose. We've had a Chamber of Commerce on Guam going way back before World War II. And right now we have the president of the Chamber of Commerce is a female. President before her was a female. We've had female Doris Brooks was the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. I think Tony Stanford was at one time. So it appeared to me that women were holding their own in the Chamber of Commerce. Not the men's Chamber of Commerce, but the Chamber of
Commerce.
Yeah. So do you remember who started the Women's Chamber of Commerce?
I have no idea.
I'll give you a hint. Her last name starts with LG.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Lou started the Women's Chamber of Commerce.
Because there was a lack of women representation in the Chamber of Commerce.
I really don't know why, what the reasons were, but it seemed to me as patronizing to females, sort of the soft bigotry of low expectations. Women can't make it if they have to go head-to-head with men. they can't make it, so we'll let them start a league of their own.
Just in case.
We'll start a league of their own, and we'll cast Tom Hanks.
Well, if that's the case, there's no crying in the Chamber of Commerce.
There's no crying in the Chamber of Commerce. There's no crying about Vince Akimoto. Yeah. So we have a Chamber of Commerce. Now, I don't know what the relationship between the Chamber of Commerce and the governor is. I suspect it's probably rather salutary. I can't see I don't recall the Chamber of Commerce coming out and criticizing or taking issue, the Women's Chamber, like the Chamber of Commerce has on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
So
I don't think there's a mystery there, Bob.
So I hope that I'm not assuming facts not in evidence here when I think that maybe the Women's Chamber of Commerce is kind of in the governor's pocket.
Yeah.
And then we have Jane Flores at the Bureau of Women's Affairs, and these two entities, the Bureau of Women's Affairs, which is one person, and the Women's Chamber, come out with righteous indignation in the face of Vince's appearance on that other radio station. I guess we better break for the halftime show, huh, Jose?
Oh, we're already there.
We're already there. All right.
For shooting 29-year-old Bohannon and another officer who was hit in the leg, the suspect was taken into custody after a nearly 12-hour standoff. In Chicago, one person was killed and 5 others injured in a drive-by shooting Sunday afternoon at a restaurant on the city's far south side.
Police say that victim was targeted. He was dining outdoors underneath a tent when an SUV drove by and shots rang out.
Fox's Aisha Hasni. Plus, protests continue in Kenosha, Wisconsin tonight in the aftermath of the police shooting of 29-year-old Jacob Blake. But Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers issuing a letter to the president tonight asking him to reconsider his upcoming visit to Kenosha this week, saying his presence will only tie up police resources, but the president will be coming despite the governor's request. The White House responding tonight with a statement saying President Trump looks forward to visiting Tuesday and helping this great city heal and rebuild. And a man was fatally shot after supporters of President Trump clashed with Black Lives Matter supporters on the streets of Portland, Oregon.
Hundreds of cars filled with supporters of the president driving through downtown Portland. They were supported and energized by the president himself.
Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? You wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Possible progress in the investigation of a black woman shot to death in a raid last March at her home in Kentucky.
Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron says they now have a critical piece that could wrap up the probe into Breonna Taylor's death in Louisville.
We do have that ballistics report. We will be meeting with the FBI at the beginning of this upcoming week.
3 Louisville officers acting on a no-knock warrant fired into Taylor's apartment, killing her. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who represents Taylor's family, says misinformation given to the family early on has fueled skepticism.
So you have to forgive them from not trusting any law enforcement officials right now.
Both appeared on CBS Face the Nation. Only one of the officers involved has been fired. None have been charged.
Fox's Grenal Scott. In the MTV Music Awards airing tonight, R&B singer The Weeknd paying a special tribute to both Jacob Blake and Breonna Taylor, demanding justice and saying there wasn't much to celebrate as he accepted accepted his awards for both Video of the Year and Best R&B Video. Meanwhile, a man and woman from Ecuador are now in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's oldest married couple.
110-year-old Julio Mora and 104-year-old Valtermina Quinteros have been married for 79 years. They were wed in secret because both their families disapproved of the wedding. Some 8 decades later, the retired teachers share 11 grandchildren and 21 great-grandchildren. There have been longer recorded marriages in the Guinness Book of World Records, but none involving people this old. The couple issuing a news release chalking up their longevity to love, mutual respect, honest work, and family values. Their daughter says her parents are mentally sharp and active, but because of the pandemic, family gatherings have been far and few between.
Fox's Sue Guzman. I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Hofity, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
$5 foot long. High with veggies.
They're back. Any foot long is a $5 foot long when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are with Bureau of Women's Affairs. As I mentioned before, the big halftime show that we all enjoy so much, the
BWA.
The BWA.
That's a new one for me.
Yeah, be a nice name for an airline, wouldn't it?
How do you say that? Bois?
Bois.
Bois.
Yeah, Bois. Bois. Akimoto needs to apologize. So before the break, I commented on the perhaps fealty that the Bureau of Women's Affairs would exhibit towards its creator, Governor Lilian Guerrero, and the fact that the Bureau of Women's Affairs, constituting Jane Flores, also, of course, is under the direct supervision of the governor, and how Jane took issue with Dr. Vince Akimoto's vitriolic remarks against Dr. Jana Manglotnya. You just can't do that. If she were a man, fine, but if it's a woman, not so fine. Now, if Vince had used those same two words in referring to, say, Dr. Carlos or any other people in the medical profession who do not have cervixes, that is men, Would the Bureau of Women's Affairs gotten so excited?
I don't think so.
They wouldn't have cared. Now, they go on, Jane's letter here goes on to make an interesting link. Using such language dehumanizes females so that when they are hit, beaten, sexually assaulted, or trafficked for drugs or money, people tend to look the other way. We are, as a community, have been combating this attitude for several years now. So in other words, the fact that people use the F word, has this dramatic effect concerning the way people treat women. That's an interesting proposition. Goes on to say Dr. Akimoto's tirade, and once again, it's the vitriolic, it's the tirade, it's not the two words. That's not the problem. Had he done the same things without the two words, they would have been just as the Women's Chamber said, incensed. In their release, they said they were incensed. They would have been just as incensed, but they wouldn't have had that really nice pretext to hang their dissatisfaction on. So Vince gave them a really nice present there. Dr. Akimoto's tirade on KUAM's The Link Thursday morning, August 27, set us back. Well, that's not the way you're treating it. You're using it to advance your ideology, Jane, in the Women's Chamber of Commerce. And then she goes on to say, he, meaning Vince, owes Dr. Manglotnia and all the women in our community an apology. Well, I know some women in our community that don't think that Vince owes them anything at all.
We got one such call on Friday.
Yes, her name was Gloria.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I think if you properly interpret her words, Gloria thinks that the Women's Chamber of Commerce owes women an apology. She said, because she said, they're playing the women's card. I get tired of this, playing the women's card. And she really nailed it. She had it right down pat. So the letter winds up, he owes Dr. Manglotnia and all women in our community an apology. The Bureau of Women's Affairs looks forward to hearing him make amends soon. The Bureau of Women's Affairs, this inanimate...
Bois.
Yeah, the Bois looks forward to making... Boy.
I'm going to get in trouble, but
yeah,
that's BWA.
Yeah,
now, I wonder if the coronavirus has a special interest group, because not too long ago, the coronavirus was a bleach.
It was, yeah.
That's outrageous.
Yeah, who was it? Yeah, I would say it's outrageous myself, but I don't want to offend my friends down in Agate.
Right.
So who was it that said the virus was a bleach? I can't remember. Somebody, was it the governor?
The governor.
The governor herself.
The governor.
Didn't she know that was degrading women?
Well, creating some subset of identity.
Yeah.
On the same said program.
Yeah. Now, if the governor said that the coronavirus is a bitch, I would expect if Gain, the Gain outfit that takes care of animals, if they were playing identity politics like the Bureau of Women's Affairs does, they would be incensed, because it's talk like that causes people to mistreat dogs.
Well, people are incensed right now that we are connecting women to the coronavirus, which is not what we're doing, not what you're doing.
No.
At all. It's the fact that the word is there now, and it seems to be freely able to be used now. The precedent was set.
Yeah, and female dogs, should be given some.
That's right.
Yeah, that may very well be the reason that people are mean to dogs.
They were misappropriated.
Yeah.
That's another outrage.
Okay, well, on the subject of apologies, I got a letter today from Sandra Sao, who is a candidate for the legislature. And it's a letter to Governor Lourdes Leon Guerrero. And it says some introductory paragraphs, and then it says, "We are listening, but still, why is it that our community is divided into haves and have-nots? Members of your administration were pictured at a funeral playing cards at the start of this pandemic. Pictures are floating around of your family members and their friends celebrating without practicing what you expect from all of us. You have claimed that you went to a restaurant and saw crowds at their bar and did nothing. See something, say something. There have been known birthday parties at hotels associated with the first family, of which you seem to have permitted. And lastly, your son, and the lieutenant governor tested positive for the Wuhan virus. In people's eyes, it boils down to a quite common statement. Quote, do as I say, not as I do. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. However, we are a forgiving community, and we recognize that we are all human, and we understand that everyone wants to be around family and friends. What I am about to say may be hard, but as our governor, please do the right thing and apologize to the people of Guam. Don't we have a sound effect for that, Jose? Oh, that's for me. Yeah. Yeah, maybe a round of applause.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah. What I'm about to say may be hard, but as our governor, please do the right thing and apologize to the people of Guam. Yeah. You may believe that you have nothing to apologize for, but please remember that you contracted the virus while violating the very, quote, demands which you expected compliance from of the people of Guam. Likewise, while we will never get access to the contract tracing reports, in your capacity, you have infected many more of our island residents while you're eating at the restaurants, attending ceremonial events, or merely celebrating birthday parties. A simple apology may not end this pandemic, but it shall bring some solidarity within our community. It will be the initial steps of rebuilding the trust of our people with their government. It may indeed also need some encouragement with the rhetoric that we are all in this together. Yeah, we're all in this together, and we'll get out of it together as well. Lastly, it will indeed command respect for your office, and that we need during these trying times. Sinceramente, Sandra Regis Sao. So, apologies. So I have a rather sexist way of summing the Akamoto Sao letter up in one phrase. What's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. Yeah. Okay, very good, Sandra. So next on the item, I've got three related things on the card. I've got BLM versus Kenosha, Rutgers versus Grammar, and Chelsea Clinton versus white privilege. But before I do that, I think I'll talk just a moment about the speakership of Y Defunto as Don Parkinson. 23rd Guam legislature was a legislature of surprises. When a new legislature is sworn in, there is a caucus of the majority party, and they as one of the guys that I served with said, divide up the pie. Yeah, who gets what committee, who gets what office, and so on. The division of the pie. I didn't use that phrase. In fact, I was a little bit critical of using it. I thought we had higher purposes than engaging in some sort of a bakery exercise. But the Democrats divided up the pie, and Tom Addo was going to be the speaker. So one of the things that incoming legislatures do is they purchase the nice little pins that senators wear for each of the incoming senators, and they print out a booklet, an illustrated booklet that just pictures of the speaker and so on. The incoming Democrat majority had their booklet all printed and handed out at the session, showing that Tom Addo was going to be the speaker. Well, the funniest thing happened, that when it actually came time to vote, Don Parkinson was nominated for speaker and drew the vote of 14 senators. Yeah. And of those 14 senators, 8 were Republicans.
Whoa.
8 were Republicans, or 7 were Republicans, and 4 were Democrats. Something of a surprise for Tom Addo. So as it all unfolded, we found out that there had in effect been a coup, and that Democrats Don Parkinson, Joe T. San Augustine, Francis Santos, John Uggan, and Sonny Orsini had teamed up with, all Democrats had teamed up with Senators Tony Umpenko, Tony Blas, Felix Camacho, Mark Forbes, Tony La Morena, Liz Anderson, Carlotta Leon Guerrero, and one other name here that I'm going to, Joanne Brown. So those Republicans and just 5 Democrats brought about this coup and unseated unseated Tom Addo before he could even be sworn in.
Wow.
So and the Democrats and Republicans were referred to as the coalition. So we had a coalition government at the legislature, and the Republicans got themselves a pretty good deal. You know, they had a proportional allocation of bills that would come on for hearing. You know, like 1/3 of the bills would come on for hearing. You know, in proportion to their numbers, etc. And they were able to name the Speaker, Joe T. San Augustine, the Vice Speaker, Ted Nelson, and so on down the line. Now, the other group, Tom Addo, Ben Pangilinan, Angel Santos, Mark Chatras, Little Lou Leon Guerrero, Judy Wanpat, and Hope Cristobal were on the outside looking in, so they were referred to as the Magnificent Seven. So you had the coalition and the Magnificent Seven. But I think it was maybe a month down the road, and apparently Ted Nelson became disenchanted with the way he was functioning in the coalition, so he bolted from the coalition over to the other group, which had been the Magnificent Seven, but when Ted was added on, it became the Crazy Eight.
The Crazy Eight, not the Great Eight.
Not that they were crazy, but you know there's a card game called Crazy Eights.
Yes, I do. I'm very familiar.
So for the rest of the 23rd legislature, we had the coalition, Don Parkinson as Speaker, and the Crazy Eight, I suppose, and that was Tom Addo and Ben Pangilinan, I suppose, and Lou probably all three of whom thought they should be the leaders of that group.
Well, I hope they didn't print any cards that said Magnificent Seven.
Because that didn't even last, yeah. So that was pretty exciting, and I tell you, a lot of jaws dropped when this all happened. Tom Adda was so disappointed he got up and just walked out of the session hall, followed by some of his cohorts.
No grapple for the gavel?
No, we weren't.
That happened another time?
We hadn't developed that skill until Ray Tenorio came along, when gavel wrestling became one of our Olympic sports here on Guam. We figured that Ray could beat just about anybody. Well, where was the WMA at that time when Ray took the gavel away from a female?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably because people had been using bad words in the cloakroom, right?
Bad gavels.
Yeah. Okay.
Very interesting story. How long ago was that?
23rd Guam Legislature. So this is the 35th.
Oh, wow.
24 years ago. Yeah. Yeah, it's I've been following, if I could have your leave to be a little bit self-laudatory, Jose. Permission granted?
Permission granted.
As though I ever needed anyone's leave to be self-laudatory. Being as proud as I am of my humility, I've been watching the Guam legislature since the 7th, when Tony Wonpat was the speaker, and then bagged it because he got a better job as our Washington man. We didn't. The Organic Act had not been amended to allow us to elect a delegate to Congress, so we had I don't remember what we called him, but it was a 4-year term, and we elected him, and he went back to Washington. Wonpat did that a couple of times, so he gave up the speakership for that particular job. He ran against Felix Crisostomo and won pretty handily. I think Wonpat won everything he ever tried, except in the 3rd Guam legislature, F.B. Leon Guerrero, Mr. Organic Act, beat him out for speaker. So there have been a lot of really interesting things that have happened with our legislature down through the years. As an example, I mentioned on Friday that the Republican Party didn't just absorb the Territorial Party. They ran head-to-head in 1968, and the Democrats took all 21 seats. The Republican Party survived. The Territorial Party took a one-way trip to Palookaville. It was never heard of again. Okay. Yeah, the speaker that was wrestled with was Judy Wonpat, not Judy Wombat, Wompat Bora. Yeah, okay, so anyhow, the next item on the list here is BLM versus Kenosha. And I've got something here from the Federalist. Corporate media didn't report what it's really like in Kenosha, so I will. And this is written by Evita Duffy, an intern at the Federalist and a junior at the University of Chicago, where she studies American history. Yeah, let me take a break and we'll come back from the 7th inning stretch to Kenosha.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Pick up dinner for you and the family at Chili's. We got you covered with a variety of delicious family platter options, like our fajita trio, Cajun chicken pasta, or our crispy chicken crispers. Or order off our new menu for you and a friend and indulge in our tasty burgers, tacos, and ribs. Get your Chili's favorites in a way that works for you. Call 648-7377 or WhatsApp 929-7376 for curbside pickup orders. Or get delivery with Good to Go. Chili's, you can still savor the moment at home.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Okay, so here we are back in Kenosha, Wisconsin, a place I visited many times. Kenosha is a classic Rust Belt city. It was a big in auto manufacturing for years and years and years. And a company named Nash, N-A-S-H, started there. Then it was American Motors, which was Nash Hudson. And then from there, Chrysler bought it out. They were making Jeeps there, but in 1988, they closed up and left town, and everybody thought Kenosha was going to turn into a ghost town. So it's a classic American Rust Belt city that there had been some really good factory jobs. As a matter of fact, I remember when I was in high school, you know, some people would say, I don't know if I want to go to college or not. I just get a job at American Motors. You know, they pay guys $100 a week to work at American Motors.
Yeah.
Yeah, but boy,
those are the days.
It was just over just like that. So Wisconsin has some of that. It's got obviously a lot of cows. It's a dairy state. It has one big city, Milwaukee, which is probably, at one time it got up to 750,000. It's probably down to 600,000 now. And then one super liberal city called Madison, which is the state capital and the state university, and it's in Dane County. Dane County is described by Republicans as 73 square miles surrounded by reality.
Right.
So a lot of these folks that are coming down to Kenosha in support of Black Lives Matter come from Milwaukee, Madison, and Chicago.
Oh, boy.
Because this is not Kenosha-like at all. So I'll just read a little bit of this here. For 3 nights, Kenosha experienced dangerous rioting. It wasn't until 3 individuals were shot and 2 died that the governor accepted help from President Trump. It's pretty darn clear who demonstrated leadership and who did not. Congressman Stiles, a congressman from that district, said, since federal agents and National Guardsmen were sent to Kenosha, there has been relative peace in the city. The overwhelming consensus among Kenoshians is that violent rioters did not come from their city. Kenosha locals did not do this to their town. Man. And then, of course, there's some really sad stories about, a guy that owned this used car company that was just completely burned out for no reason at all. Completely destroyed. Going on Wednesday evening, local and federal law enforcement officials stopped an out-of-state caravan of vehicles filled with fuel cans and illegal fireworks, police reported. The vehicles contained various items, including helmets, gas masks, protective vests, illegal fireworks, and suspected controlled substances. 9 people were arrested for disorderly conduct. Wisconsinites have seen the violence in America's major cities, but never imagined it would come to one of theirs. The destruction and violence that outside agitators brought to Kenosha has scared many people who once believed the state which is 97% rural and home to long vowels, rhubarb pie, and friendly folks, was a safe place. For better or worse, Democrats have tied themselves politically to the Marxist Black Lives Matter organization. So the Democrats and white coats for Black Lives Matter. I can't get over that. That when those doctors and nurses went down to the Skinner Plaza and took a knee for over 8 minutes in support of Black Lives Matter. For better or worse, Democrats have tied themselves politically to the Marxist Black Lives Matter organization. Joe Biden, who has not been to Wisconsin in 670 days. Of course, there's no tunnel from Joe Biden's basement to Wisconsin, so I can understand that.
There's cable.
Finally, weekly denounced violent rioting, although he refused to explicitly condemn Antifa or Black Lives Matter. And the governor of Wisconsin did the same thing. You know, there was a shooting. We don't know all the details of it. The details are coming out slowly, and it's kind of like George Floyd. It appears that there's a lot more to it than the short video, but we don't know yet. But the governor of Wisconsin came out. He didn't say boo about the rioting in otherwise peaceful Kenosha. He didn't want to send the National Guard. He didn't want to have help from Trump. So it looks like, if not encouraging the riots and the looting, he's at least acquiescing in it. CNN anchors Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo, who are so far to the left that some people don't even think they have a right hand, because if they did, they cut it off, also condemned violence in Kenosha on Tuesday because recent polling shows rioting is not being well received by voters. Even though the corporate media is beginning to denounce violent rioting, they still do not seem to care much for the victims of Black Lives Matter by refusing to report their stories. Polling in the upcoming weeks will show whether Biden's response was too little and too late, and if support of Black Lives Matter by the Democrat Party and corporate media is out of step with average Americans. Well, from what I understand, it's out of step with average Kenosans. Again, you know, if something happened here, if I happen to be in the States and something happened here that seemed a little strange, I'd detect it. You know, when you live in a place for a long time, you have a feeling about how people will react and how they won't react. And this starting fires and trashing buildings in downtown Kenosha, not the kind of thing that folks in Kenosha are going to really relish.
I actually have a sister and brother-in-law who live just a little north of Milwaukee, so I'm very familiar with Kenosha. And you're absolutely right. It's a quiet place.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah.
It borders some really crazy towns, though.
Yeah. So what town north of Milwaukee?
Germantown. South of Waukesha, I think.
North of Waukesha.
North of Waukesha.
Yeah. If you got the Shermantown in
south of Menominee Falls, that's
what
I'm thinking.
Yeah. Menominee Falls is a high rent district. Menominee Falls and Mequon.
Kind of the same demeanor as Kenosha, Menominee Falls.
Really, yeah. So, and in Wisconsin, we got the Shermantown. Lots of Sherman.
A lot of Lutheran churches.
Yeah. Okay, next item on the card is Rutgers versus grammar. English department pledges to incorporate critical grammar into the program. Now, critical is one of those words that you knew the meaning of for a long, long time until the left got a hold of it. And the left practices something called critical studies. It's something that came from a guy named Antonio Gramsci. Critical studies means that you study everything in terms of oppressed and oppressor. A classic example of critical studies would be Howard Zinn and his book about American history. In other words, critical studies would cause you to tear everything about the United States apart, tear it down. So here at Rutgers, we're going to have critical grammar. Rutgers University's English department will change its standards of English instruction in an effort to stand with and respond to the Black Lives Matter movement. In an email written by Department Chairwoman Rebecca Walkowitz, the graduate writing program will emphasize social justice and social justice and critical grammar. This is the graduate. This is not freshman comp, not bonehead English, right? Walkowitz said the department would respond to recent events with workshops on social justice and writing. Increasing focus on graduate student life and incorporating critical grammar into our pedagogy. The critical grammar approach challenges the standard academic form of the English language in favor of a more inclusive writing experience. The curriculum puts an emphasis on the variability of the English language instead of accuracy. This approach challenges the familiar dogma that writing instruction should limit emphasis on grammar sentence level issues so as not to put students from multilingual, non-standard, quote, academic English backgrounds at a disadvantage. Wow.
Wasn't this done before? Back like 20 years ago?
When there was a move to legitimatize Ebonics. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So this is the graduate course?
Yeah, and written Ebonics, apparently, yeah. Okay. Talk about the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. It encourages students to develop a critical awareness of the variety of choices available to them with regard to micro-level issues in order to empower them and equip them to push against biases based on, quote, written accents. Written accents. This is Rutgers. Yeah.
Get it. Are you sure that's not a satire magazine you're reading there?
Yeah. It sounds like, if they had sound effects with this, you wouldn't be able to hear me because the horn would be beeping all the time.
Every other word.
Yeah. Additionally, the department said it will provide more reading to upper-level writing classes on subjects of racism, sexism, homophobia, and related forms of systemic discrimination. Leonidas Johnson, a speech pathologist and libertarian activist, said the school's change makes the racist assumption that minorities cannot comprehend traditional English. Johnson called the change insulting, patronizing, and in itself extremely racist. Now, that guy's going to be canceled. You can bet on that. The idea that expecting a student to write in grammatically correct sentences is indicative of racial bias is asinine, Johnson told the Washington Free Beacon. It's like these people believe that being non-white is an inherent handicap or learning disability. That's racism. It has become very clear to me that those who claim to be anti-racist are often the most racist people in this country. Rutgers' new anti-racist language standard comes alongside a litany of changes at other universities. The James Madison Residential College at Michigan State, Activists at the University of Pittsburgh have called for the firing of any employee deemed racist or discriminatory by students. And the school said it will give the demand serious considerations. You know how that one's going to work. When you, in your college days, you recognize some teachers, some professors were hard graders and some were easy graders, right?
Yeah,
right, Jose? Yeah. Well, knowing that, guess which group of professors will be seen to be the racists?
We don't have to ask the people which classes to avoid now. We can just cancel them.
Exactly. The Rutgers English Department created a committee on bias awareness and prevention in 2012. In light of Black Lives Matter protests, the school has moved past bias awareness and prevention and into a focus on decolonization. So they're going to decolonize New Jersey? I got a feeling that Michael Bavacqua is not going to like this. They're kind of stealing his thunder. He's the decolonization man. Walkowitz's email talks of decolonizing the Writing Center. The department offers a specific internship titled Decolonizing the Writing Center to make the writing centers more linguistically diverse. Now you can, maybe now out there in our international radio listening audience, you can see why I'm kind of a grammar Nazi when it comes to using they for the third person singular and using and saying normalcy instead of normality. Once this cat gets out of the bag and falls into the wrong hands, there's no telling where it's going to go. Next item on the card, Chelsea Clinton versus white privilege. Now there's a match made in heaven. Former first daughter Chelsea Clinton talked about how she is working to, quote, erode white privilege out of her children during a conversation with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Now, if you can't spot Ayanna Pressley, Jose, she is one of the members of the squad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Rashid Tlaib, and who's the fourth one?
I can't remember that fourth one. She's loud, though.
Yeah. Let's see, Tlaib, Pressley, AOC. Yeah, it'll come to me. Yeah, how could I ever forget? Anyhow, that's Ayanna Pressley. The conversation was part of a Women for Biden online event. You know, Congresswoman, certainly my children are young, but we believe they're young but still citizens. So we talked about the ratification of the 19th Amendment and Women's Equality Day, but how fundamentally incomplete that victory was, Clinton said. You know, Clinton went on to say, Chelsea went on to say, when some idiot like my father can be elected president of the United States, you know that our democracy is not working right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I saw a listener tell us who that fourth person was. Omar.
Oh, yeah. How could I forget? Ilhan Omar.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like talking about the New York. You know, the Yankees had a really good team there. What was that guy? Center fielder Joe something or other, you know?
Escapes my mind. She's the other squeaky wheel.
Yeah. According to the first daughter, the 19th Amendment was a flawed victory because indigenous and black women did not have the right to vote. And there are some states like Alaska that make it difficult for Native American women to vote. You know, 40% of Americans with disabilities report that they have real challenges voting in person. And so in states where there haven't been kind of no excuse absentee voting, or where there hasn't been the introduction of early voting yet, you know. You can always tell someone is pretty well educated when they punctuate their sentences with you know, right?
Critical grammar.
Yeah. You know, it's still kind of easy, fair, or equal for many Americans to vote, Clinton explained. And I think it's really important that my children understand that. Presley praised Clinton's desire to teach her children. I'm going to rework that sentence. Presley praised Clinton for indoctrinating her children into being good leftists. You're probably modeling that which my mother certainly believed, which is that a parent is a child's first teacher. And so I appreciate that you're providing that full education, etc. And then to the columnists, it's always amazing to listen to people like Chelsea Clinton talk about wanting to erode white privilege out of their kids. How do they talk to kids who are 4 and 5 years old about this idea that they're given so many more things or opportunities because of the color of their skin? Kids at that age don't understand the concepts of racism or white privilege. You got to start teaching them young, right? For the most part, kids at that age are focused on playing outside, or in 2020, playing on their tablets. Kids tend to see past race and gender. They're innocent, but we'll work with them. We'll get them past that. They haven't been exposed to the harsh realities of the world. They have a brighter outlook on things. Chelsea Clinton grew up with luxuries most people can only dream of. It's not like she's lived a, quote, normal life. It's not like she knows what it's like to struggle to pay the bills, find a job, or put food on the table. She's got like an $800,000 a year gig right now. She was automatically put on a pedestal and given more opportunities because of her last name being related to the former president growing up in politics. It's hard to take this kind of thing seriously from someone who has lived off the majority of their life in national politics. Okay, well, we're coming up to the home stretch here on Tall Tales. Let's take a short break.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumont. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Okay, so here we are, home stretch, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, and the next item on the card is Paris versus Shelton, a couple of senators. Senators raid recycling revolving fund, move $500,000 from mirrors to UOG's G3. As residents worry about Wuhan virus impact on their futures, senators voted last night to approve into the budget bill $500,000 to the office that funds Senator Shelton's brother's office. Well, nepotism's okay so long as you keep it in the family. Jose? Jose? Yeah, that's better. Okay. Yeah, the money was taken from the fund used to get rid of abandoned vehicles throughout the island. Senator Sabina Paris led the effort against taking this money and giving it to Mr. Shelton's brother, Austin Shelton's office. Joining Ms. Paris were Senators Moylan, Titagui, Therese Terlahi, Louise Munia, Kelly Marsh, Titano, and Vice Speaker Nelson. Every year, the people pay an annual vehicle registration fee, and those funds go into a special lockbox called the Recycling Revolving Fund. The law is clear on these funds must be used, etc. This is the law, and no legislature has ever violated it. These are quotes from Nelson, I think. The $500,000 will now go into what's called a G3 initiative within the university. If the legislature passes the bill as is, and the governor signs it, that initiative is led by Mr. Shelton, Austin Shelton, who is the brother of Senator Shelton. And when asked what the money will be used for, Mr. Shelton's office explained it will be used to fund conferences and off-island travel. Well, what's better, to use the money in that recycling revolving fund to clean up trash and junk cars, etc., or to send it out there to G3 so it can be used for conferences and off-island travel? That's a no-brainer. If it happens that your brother is the one that's running the office. Yeah, okay, well.
That was an easy connection there.
Yeah, really. So there's a little bit more to this story, but I'm going to take advantage of the wisdom and courage of the most dangerous man in the room. R. Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob.
Good afternoon, R. Carl.
Yeah, I was thinking this would be one of those rare days when I didn't call up, but that story you just read just really tweaked my irritation. I have a friend who lives on Waisangsong Road, you know, in the main thoroughfare, you know, that drives through there. I mean, it's like a highway. There's so many cars drive through there. And someone abandoned a car in front of his house. And somehow he's able to get it moved down the street. But it's been out there right in front of one of the houses there for months. This is in the main Dededo neighborhood with, you know, decent houses all around. And it's just...
I have a solution for you, Carl.
What's that?
Send a sunshine law request to the G3 office at the university and ask for the email and phone number of Austin Shelton. And then when you get that, call Mr. Shelton or email him and ask him to ask his sister if she would do something about that car that's been there for so long.
It's just so blatant. I mean, there's no embarrassment. There's no shame. I mean, it's so blatant. This one act alone. I mean, it's just so symbolic of what we have right now in this administration and this legislature. I mean, it's just shocking. And the car, I'm sure, is still there. You know, just a couple of houses over from my friend's house, out there on the main street. It's just, that's all about I got to say, Bob. It's amazing. I'm amazed.
So
every time I think they've reached rock bottom, someone at the legislature breaks out a pick and shovel and goes deeper.
So is it possible that you may not vote for Amanda Shelton in the general election, Carl?
It's possible. Just maybe. There's an off chance.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bob, thank you for allowing me to air that. I appreciate it.
Okay, Carl.
All right, boy.
So, some chickens have come home to roost for Amanda Shelton. She thought she'd get away with it, but now she has excited the ire of the most dangerous man in the room. Okay, well, we'll be back tomorrow. Tall Tales, I suspect, probably with the most dangerous man in the room. And I'll pick up the card with Julian Uggen versus capitalism. See you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
He will be missed. Fox News, I'm Mary Corsetti. That's what St. Louis City Police are saying tonight, as one of their own has died in the line of duty. He was one of 2 officers shot Saturday night after responding to a shooting call.
A St. Louis police officer who was shot in the head during a standoff on Saturday has died. The victim, 29-year-old Tamaris Bohannon, served for nearly 4 years. A second officer was hurt.